Majority in the Middle has published a new study tracking the success of bipartisan legislation in Minnesota during the 2025 and 2026 biennium. Despite increasingly polarized political discussion, the nonprofit says that bipartisan cooperation is happening more often and more consistently in the last 4 years since it started tracking bills in the House and Senate. In the current biennium, the Minnesota House and Senate each introduced over 5,000 bills. 46% of the bills in the Senate had an author from each party, and in the House, 36% did. The nonprofit credits this rise in bipartisanship to the close split in the House and Senate and the House Power Sharing Agreement from 2025.
I think the best thing would be co-chairing of the committees. I think that would be the most sort of healthy, functioning sort of piece that they could carry over. Do I think that's going to happen? No. So probably the most realistic thing to keep is co-presenting bipartisan bills.
The nonprofit hopes that by highlighting the success of bipartisan bills that are agreed to behind closed doors, it can encourage both parties to consider more open displays of cooperation and compromise.